welcome everybody to GeoHug. I'm so excited that we're back after a nice little break. But before we do kick off today's session, I would like to take this time to acknowledge the traditional lands which we're all coming from today. I live on the beautiful lands of the Gadigal of the people of the Aurora Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present, and future. And yes, I'm thrilled that we have Andrew Heap joining us today. So Andrew is the Chief of the Minerals, Energy and Groundwater Division at Geoscience Australia, where he plays a pivotal role in shaping the nation's geoscience agenda. With more than 2 decades of experience in leading geoscience initiatives in the public sector, he collaborates with industry, academia and government, ensuring the benefits of pre-competitive geoscience are maximised for Australia. And it is going to be brilliant learning from him today about how the Exploring from the Future program inspired the landmark pre-competitive geoscience initiative called Resourcing Australia's Prosperity. So this presentation will provide us a great overview of the new Resourcing Australia led by Geoscience Australia, where this initiative is $3.4 billion of investment over 35 years and is designed to position Australia as a global renewable energy leader while striving for a net zero emissions by 2050. So this is going to be a fantastic session. I hope you all enjoy it. I'm going to be promoting you all up as panelists throughout the session. You're more than welcome to come on through. We'll be opening up the floor at the end for some great discussions. So yeah, please come through if you're able to get the cameras on or get the mics on. But yes, thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us today. It's brilliant having you here.
It's fine. Thank you, Jessica. It's great to be here.
It's fantastic. I was really curious what got you into geology to begin with.
Oh, it wasn't my first choice, I must confess.
Oh.
When I was a child, I actually wanted to be an architect. And but then I used to spend a lot of time as a child going to the beach with my family, and I was always curious about how the waves made the shapes on the earth through their action, and I guess I was hooked by that, trying to understand that. So I've always had a natural curiosity about the world and the way that the world processes work and shape the world that influences us as humans too. So I guess that was how I fell into it, really. But I actually really wanted to be an architect, but I eventually turned to geology, turned to the dark side to be a geologist.
That is awesome. I've heard all sorts of like accidental geologist stories, but it's never been from an architect perspective. So that's a new one. That's very cool.
The great thing is my favorite video game is Minecraft. And I get to play with that with my son, so I can be an architect and a geologist at the same time, which is great.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that. That is awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, you've had more than 2 decades of experience. I was curious, yeah, some like career highlights on your journey so far.
Well, certainly a big career highlight, obviously, was delivering the program I'm going to be talking about in a few minutes. Being one of the most ambitious programs that we've ever undertaken as part of the government and the government's investment in us and in geoscience and generally. So it's a real career highlight to actually finally deliver that, and with all the great people around that, Geoscience Australia and all our partners. It was a collective effort. By no means could we do that alone. It was a collective effort with hundreds of people involved in it. It's just fantastic to see science being used for a great purpose. And I think for me, it's been a real career highlight to deliver that and deliver, what will be great benefits to our great nation.
That's awesome. Thank you. So this is my favorite part, but I always get everyone to bring along some of their favorite pet rocks, and I'm very curious what you have for us today.
Well, mine might be a bit boring, but it goes back to the beach days of, silica on the beach. So my favorite rock is, I hope you can see that okay. This is not a very impressive piece, but this is actually a piece of quartz which contains silica that goes to, when it's processed, something a bit more like that, which is actually the pure silicon metal itself.
Wow, I've never seen that before.
Yeah, and the reason I like that is, going back to my beach days, but also in a practical sense, is that we wouldn't be talking to you or over to the GeoHug community today without silicon. So it's such an enabling mineral that I think it's really a really important one, and maybe one of the unsung heroes of the minerals world. That
is awesome. That is Brilliant. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. It's fantastic having you here. And yeah, if you could share your screen and we'll get stuck into it.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Jessica. Oh yeah, thanks, Jessica, and to all the GeoHub community. Thanks for the opportunity to share with you today some of the key elements of the program that we've just completed, but also give a nod to our next program that we're going to be embarking on, as you mentioned in your introduction, Jessica, Resourcing Australia's Initiative program. So my aim today is really to give an overview of the geoscience that we do and how we undertake it and how it can be used to make informed decisions about the sustainable development of Australia's resources. So before I do that, I just wanted to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of all the lands on which we're meeting today. I'm joining you from Ngambri and Ngunnawal country around Canberra, but I do pay my respects to elders from country that I'm meeting you from today, but also for all the elders and past, present and emerging from all across the country. So we know that the resources sector is changing rapidly in response to the energy transition and the drive to secure the supply of critical minerals and strategic materials required to meet our net zero targets. And we're seeing an increased pressure put on the sector due to the world events such as geopolitical impacts of creating concentrated critical mineral supply chains, for instance. And the culmination of these drivers is being described as a once-in-a-generation opportunity for Australia to become a renewable energy superpower. But understanding Australia's geology and the resource potential has never been more crucial for us in this to fully realise the opportunities that this opportunity presents to us. So we've all heard the stories, realising our net zero emission goals by 2050 presents a huge opportunity, as I said, and the International Energy Agency estimates that by 2030 alone, the world's going to need more 41 new nickel mines, 30 new lithium mines, 11 new cobalt mines, and more than 100 new hydrogen plants. And so the forecasts for 2050 are even larger. So getting to net zero will rely on maintaining a pipeline of new resource projects, which will rely on further discoveries based on future exploration. But as we know, exploration is actually quite a risky business, and especially in new regions and for new commodities that we're going to need. So here in Australia, the challenge for us is to unlock the exploration frontier at depth, we feel, or about 80% or so of our landmass, where the prospective geology is beneath layers of younger sediments. So below the surface is also where our precious groundwater resources are. And so it's vital that these water resources sustain valuable ecosystems, as well as the communities, and as well as the industries and new resource projects that might come on board as a result of that future exploration. So given Australia has some of the largest groundwater systems in the world, with many geological provinces crossing state and territory borders, decisions regarding the sustainable use of our nation's resources need to be based on a robust cross-border information and data sharing. And that's where Geoscience Australia comes in. We play a pivotal role as the federal government geoscience organisation, providing that national geoscience framework that allows us to understand the geology and therefore the resource potential. And well, I guess the Australian government has been investing in Geoscience Australia and pre-competitive geoscience, as we like to call it, for over 70 years. And as I said, the most recent budget that came out in May this year, the government made its most significant investment ever in pre-competitive geoscience. As you mentioned, Jessica, it's the $3.4 billion 35-year Resourcing Australia's Prosperity program that will be led by Geoscience Australia. And this generational investment in public geoscience is set to accelerate the discovery of the critical minerals and strategic materials we need to actually get us on that or make the net zero transition that we need to make. So Resourcing Australia's Prosperity is aimed at cementing our nation's position as a global renewable energy leader and comes under the Future Made in Australia package, which is designed to create new jobs and opportunities for maximising the economic and industrial benefits of the move towards that net zero ambition. So Resourcing Australia's Prosperity is an ambitious endeavour, as I said, and that will see us use our collective skills and expertise to assess the national potential for a broad range of resources. And I'll talk about that a little bit later in my talk. And those assessments will include analysis of environmental, social and governance risk factors for resource exploration and development. And over the next 35 years, we'll deliver mineral potential maps for 36 or all 36 of Australia's critical minerals and strategic materials, and have complete national coverages of the key data sets. We'll also complete at least 12 what we're calling deep dives or regional studies, detailed regional studies on at least 12 areas across the country, and provide detailed inventories of all of Australia's groundwater resources as well, of systems. In addition to this, we will unlock and modernise valuable archives of offshore legacy data to support assessment of CO2 storage potential and help identify suitable sites for the production of offshore wind power. And so we're currently in this exciting phase of planning the next 10 years of the work under the 4 integrated themes shown on the slide. And the remainder of my presentation, what I'll do is I'll provide some examples of the type of work we do and have done under Exploring for the Future, and that we intend to expand on and extend as part of the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative. But before I get to that, just let me first illustrate the scale of the data collection and analysis that we have in mind under the program. So in June, as I said, we completed what was the largest investment in pre-competitive geoscience to date, the $225 million Exploring for the Future program. This map shows the transformational scale of the data we collected during that program. It was 8 years long. And under Resourcing Australia's Prosperity, we will, and the money we're getting for that, we will ensure that the scale and quality of this data continues over the next 35 years. So this work is only possible through the support of our research partners, as I mentioned out in the beginning, in the intro, and especially want to shout out to our state and territory counterparts and our colleagues in academia, and we very much look forward to continuing the collaborations as we embark on the new program. But over the last 8 years, it's part of the Exploring for the Future program. We collected hundreds of thousands of line kilometres of airborne geophysics. We measured geophysical response of thousands of stations. We analysed chemical composition of tens of thousands of soil, rock and water samples. And we analysed over 124 million mineral grains and drilled tens of kilometres of rock. We've also released over 1,000 new data sets and publications and added more than 9.6 million data points to our national data holdings. And in August this year, we delivered a week-long showcase providing an in-depth view of all that work. And if you're interested or if people missed it, you can certainly catch up on the talks and the discussions that were as part of the showcase on our YouTube channel, or read the summary of the program by following the website links that are on the slide that I'm showing. So if you want to know a little bit more about how we can access the data and information itself, we obviously make our vast volumes of data that we collect publicly available to anyone to use, and there's some QR codes on the slide there that people might want to use to take you directly to those publications or our data discovery portal. But our science products are basically accessible through those codes from our electronic data catalog, ECAT. And we do that to provide the scientific data required to help informed decision makers make informed decisions on the sustainable development of Australia's natural resources. So the work that we do comes before industry investment, not instead of it. And through ECAT, you can explore and access literally hundreds of geological, geochemical, and geophysical data sets. It also includes maps, reports, and decision support tools in both 2D and 3D. So I encourage you to visit the ECAT and see the work that's being done there. And now I'll turn now to the 4 themes of our Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative, as I mentioned earlier. So for the last decade, we have made significant progress in advancing and expanding Australia's geoscience data sets across the country. And here's just a snapshot of over the 40 data sets that we advanced over the last 8 years. These data sets characterise Australia's land surface, sedimentary basins, the crust, and the lithospheric mantle, from outcrop at the surface to depths of a few hundred kilometres. We like to think that we're leaders in this respect, but we're certainly not going to be resting on our laurels. Our aim is to increase the resolution and diversity of our national data sets, and we target our data collection to meet the needs of exploration and natural resource management. But the data sets have much broader applications in the areas such as community safety and infrastructure planning. So we're seeing a lot of take-up by a whole range of stakeholders of the information and data that we provide. And much of our data collection over the last 8 years has been formed by the 2015 Uncover Amira roadmap that was published. So we specifically addressed the highest and high priorities identified by industry in the roadmap to unlock a new exploration search base for resources across Australia, with a particular focus on imaging the subsurface. The AusAEM 20-kilometre spaced airborne electromagnetic survey now covers 70% of the mainland, and the deep-looking AusLAMP magnetotellurics coverage now spans over 50%. And we've completed one of the world's largest passive seismic surveys by deploying stations spaced 200 kilometres apart across the mainland of Australia. And our isotopic maps now span 5 isotopic systems. So interestingly, we are seeing the re-emergence of the land surface as an exploration frontier due to the rise in importance of critical minerals. This has led to the mapping of surface chemistry and mineralogy to support new discoveries. Each of these endeavours is complemented by a continued research effort, allowing us to map the properties of the Earth with greater fidelity than ever before. And these data sets will be expanded and reinterpreted for many years to gain new insights into Australia's geological and resource endowments. Each data set could be the focus of a dedicated talk. However, I'll highlight just 3 for now. I'm sure many of you are aware of AusAEM, our aspirational airborne electromagnetic project. AusAEM seeks to cover Australia with 20-kilometre space flight line data, and the data is used to image the electrical conductivity of the Earth down to 300 to 500 metres. Applications of this information are vast, including mapping of sedimentary layers in depth to basement, distribution of minerals such as rare earth elements and clays, groundwater aquifers and aquatards, water quality including coastal saltwater intrusion, and basement conductors that could be related to mineralisation. To date, we've been delivering the raw data as well as the profiles that show the results of a single deterministic conversion of the data. And in August, we released an exciting new product that quantifies the uncertainty in imaging of the subsurface. The product sharpens the results and will accelerate decision making. As the result of probabilistic airborne electromagnetic inversion of AEM data that made possible through the expert in-house software development we have here, and utilise the supercomputer facilities at the National Computational Infrastructure facility at ANU here in Canberra. An example of the difference this new approach has made is highlighted on the profile from the southern part of Cape York, shown at the top part of the slide. And you can see that the deterministic approach could not resolve the continuous conductor at depth revealed by the probabilistic inversion approach. In this new approach, in the image, each conductor is sharper, more continuous, and finer scale features are resolved. And the maps below show the extent of the probabilistic inversion now available through our data discovery portal. And we're making 3 results available for each profile. There's the P10 or the 10th percentile of most resistive results shown on the left, the P50 or the median result shown in the middle, and the P90 or the 90th percentile of the most conductive results shown on the right. And we have found that these 3 results provide the most useful representation of possible model solutions that can help accelerate decision making. So for example, if you're an explorer and looking to screen the data set for the most robust basement conductors, it's best probably to use the P10 results, as conductors in this result will be the most robust. In contrast, if you're looking for fresh groundwater resources, it would be best to look for resistors on the P90 result. I guess whereas if you're constructing a regional geological interpretation, the P50 is probably the best place to start. So as part of our new Resourcing Australia's Prosperity initiative, we'll continue this work and plan to realise our probabilistic inversion for all AusAEM data across Australia. And this will mean that there is complete coverage of Western Australia by the middle of next year. As part of the initiative, we aim to complete the national AusAEM data coverage. Data sets such as AusAEM, as well as magnetics, gravity, passive seismic, and MT, allow us to image the subsurface with greater certainty. And these data sets need to be interpreted to reveal the geology. So I guess the question you'll ask is, what are we doing about that? So to unlock the uncover search space I mentioned before, we need geological maps. So over the last 8 years, we have been systematically interpreting and mapping the subsurface geology across Australia using our geophysical data sets, drill holes, and the relevant state and territory data sets. In August, we released the world's first layered geology map of the continent, which resulted in a tremendous interest on LinkedIn. These layers reveal the geology beneath the sediments and rocks laid down over successive geological eras. And the scale of this undertaking cannot be understated. Around 7,600 individual geological units have been consistently mapped across Australia, resulting in hundreds of thousands of polygons across multiple time periods. In parallel, we've been growing in our coverage of sediment thickness, shown on the right of the slide. As part of the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative, we aim to release this new data set before the end of next year. Finding these data sets paves the way forward for a national 3D geological model that will allow us to assess the near-surface explorations search space like never before. An important advance over the last decade has been the recognition that deep structures control the distribution of resources near the surface. And in 2020, we published a study that revealed sediment-hosted base metals and iron oxide copper gold deposits in Australia and the world occur above the transition from thick to thin portions of the tectonic plates, depicted by the depth to the Lithospheric asthenosphere boundary, or the LAB for short. Given the importance of mapping this boundary accurately over the last 4 years, we have invested in improving this map for Australia, as shown in the top left panel. To improve underlying tomography models, we deployed seismometers placed 200 kilometres apart across Australia to collect passive seismic data. In the meantime, through our collaboration with the Australian National University and Imperial College London, we've improved our approach to mapping the LAB. And we are now able to quantify uncertainty in our models. We increased the number of Zenith and Xenocris calibration sites across Australia from 9 to 60 through new data collection and a comprehensive assessment of academic literature stretching back to the 1960s. And we improved the calibration itself by undertaking laboratory high temperature and pressure experiments. We released an updated map of the Australian LAB shown on the top left in August. Overall, the depth to LAB has increased across Australia, but our original observation that the relationship between the distribution of deposits and the lithospheric thickness changes, as well as young volcanism in thin portions of the plate still holds. And the outline of lithospheric blocks across Australia have been sharpened. The uncertainty on the LAB depths shown at the top right is mostly 10 kilometres and generally less than 25 kilometres. So our new approach also allows us to map other useful parameters, such as the mantle component of heat flow, shown in the bottom left. Oh, sorry, shown in the bottom right. Oh, sorry, bottom left, yes. And Australia's seismogenic thickness, shown in the bottom right. Examining the distribution of neogene faults, shown on the bottom right, reveals that they are predominantly localized along gradients in seismogenic thickness. And this is a well-known global relationship that had not been observed in Australia. And if it holds up with continued research, could inform seismic risk assessments into the future. So each data set I've discussed so far is useful in and of itself, yet combining the predictive power of individual data sets in innovative ways can reveal Australia's resource potential. An important step change since 2016 has been to explicitly assess and map the national resource potential for specific minerals and energy and groundwater resources across Australia. The national coverage of these individual assessments are the beginnings of an inventory of Australia's resource potential, which we will progress and continue under the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative. For explorers, resource assessments identify new prospective ground to peg or start a joint venture. For communities, they provide information on what is known about the local resources and potential development opportunities. And for governments, they can inform land use planning, such as the placement of conservation zones or locations for targeting industry support. The top three maps on the left of the slide show where a particular combination of mineral system processes occurred to maximize the chance of discovery for certain styles of nickel, copper, and iron oxide copper gold deposits. This is a style of resource assessment pioneered at Geoscience Australia in 2016, and we continue to improve it by refining input data sets and applying more advanced analytical techniques. The map on the bottom left is our Atlas of Australian mine waste. Together with the state and territorial geological surveys, approximately 80 mine waste sites across Australia are being sampled and analysed for critical minerals through a collaboration with the University of Queensland and RMIT universities. Importantly, and in a major development of our thinking, we have gone beyond mapping geological potential. We now provide tools to identify economic fairways, which provide a first-order estimate of a potential project's economic viability. The map on the top right shows the economic fairway for green hydrogen, the one below that for green steel manufacturing, and below that is the relative cost of carbon capture and storage. Each assessment is underpinned by specific resource development cost models, the distribution of infrastructure, variations in royalty payments, and geology. The last map on the slide shows the distribution of 42 national hydrogeological units that we have rapidly assessed to update our national hydrogeological knowledge. We're combining and standardizing legacy data and information to better understand each of these units. And as you can see, building a unified national inventory of resource potential, that's quite complex. So next I want to show you where we want to head with this line of work. I'll begin by highlighting some of that complexity. On the left of the slide, there are 3 mineral potential maps. They show the spatial likelihood of different earth processes coalescing to form a copper ore deposit, with the more favorable areas shown in red. The top map is our newest model for iron oxide copper gold style mineralization. You can see the map has a higher spatial resolution, as it is the first one to incorporate information from the layered geology map I referred to earlier. As we assess different mineral systems, we can start to combine them to map overall copper potential across Australia, and not just the potential of any one system. We still have quite a few systems to assess before a comprehensive picture emerges for any particular commodity, but we have made great strides in developing a robust methodology and applying it to a key commodity type. Construction of the mineral potential maps I just showed relies on an understanding of geological processes that concentrate commodities, commonly referred to as genetic models. Over the decades, we have invested heavily in advancing such knowledge, resulting in increasing the maturity of understanding of base precious metal mineral systems, which are now used extensively. For example, BHP said that the iron oxide copper gold mineral systems model we've developed helped them discover Oak Dam West. Now the search for critical minerals is driving us to develop new models for minerals we have not considered before. Here is an example from our work in the Critical Minerals Research and Development Hub, where we are collaborating with ANSTO and CSIRO on high purity silica, necessary feedstock for production of silicon necessary for manufacturing semiconductors and solar voltaic cells. If you're interested in this system, we have just published a review of what we know about high purity silica in Australia in the Australian Journal of Earth Sciences Critical Minerals Special Issue. But here I'm showing you some of our latest work, the first conceptualization of a high purity quartz mineral system driven by changes in temperature and tectonic maturity. We use this model to make the mineral potential map shown here, and we're currently testing our model by sampling quartz from the identified hotspots. So far, we've undertaken sampling in Mount Isa and in the Pilbara, and next we plan to sample in the Harts Range in Northern Territory and the Victorian goldfields. To assess Australia's potential for all critical mineral systems, we will be undertaking a lot more work like this through the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative. About half of the critical minerals on Australia's list are sourced as co- or byproducts of mining of other commodities. So you can ask this question too, so what are we doing to assess the potential of these? And we can ask that question through some work that we're doing through the Critical Minerals Mapping Initiative, which is a collaboration between Geoscience Australia, the Geological Survey of Canada, and the United States Geological Survey. We're building on the empirical knowledge to quantify these associations so that we can infer the level of enrichment of critical minerals in most deposits. 2 months ago, we released a major update to our Critical Minerals and Ores database, boosting the number of samples from 7,300 to over 25,000, sourced from over 1,500 deposits across 60 countries. The database is the largest of its kind and can be accessed from criticalminerals.org, as shown on the slide, with each analysis classified as a consistent mineral systems classification. This database allows us to quantify the association of critical minerals and deposit types as a function of grade. It also allows us to pose questions such as to what degree critical minerals are naturally enriched in certain deposit types, as opposed to the level of enrichment nurtured through local geological factors. The more analysis we have, the better we can answer these questions. and infer the resource potential where we don't have direct measurements. It can even help to infer where we might have found what we might find in mine waste. We therefore have an open call out to contribute data to this database, which you can find on the portal. Lastly, on the theme of national resource potential, I want to share with you some new work we are doing to quantitatively bringing insights gained from the resource potential studies with our techno-economic modelling and environmental considerations. So as the diversity and number of streams of information to support decision-making grows, there is a growing need for transparent aggregation of this information. The challenge is to effectively evaluate and communicate separate criteria and to identify projects that perform best under a range of competing metrics. On this slide, I'm showing the results of a proof of concept study we have undertaken with Monash University. The study combines the nickel and platinum group element mineral potential map, results from our nickel economic fairways assessment for a moderate-sized nickel deposit, and an overall water risk to mining. The latter data set is an example of an ESG consideration, and we could equally use any other ordered data set. We identified optimal locations through a Pareto front analysis. On the XY plot, the Pareto front analysis identifies the locations that should be considered first, which lie on the Pareto frontier, and once removed, the next frontier can be identified, and so on. The projects along the frontier are coloured by the Pareto rank and are also shown on the map. Interestingly, the projects with the best average rank are found in Western Australia's Southwest Mineral Province, where the Chalice Gold's Groundwater deposit was discovered. This approach paves the way to combine our geological and techno-economic assessments with data sets that map environmental, social, and governance factors, irrespective of the relative importance placed on any specific factor made in decision-making. So to test the rigour of our national resource potential models, including constraining unknown geology, we also work at the regional scale to determine resource potential. I'll highlight 4 examples of this work, starting with the Paderca Basin, which spans the Northern Territory, South Australia and Queensland border, and then moving to the Upper Darling Baaka River floodplain and the Delamerian origin in New South Wales, and conclude with some key learnings from 2 recent projects in Queensland. In the Paderca Basin, we wanted to know why exploration for oil and gas had failed. To do this, we reprocessed valuable legacy seismic reflection data and analysed information on legacy drill holes. Our analysis showed that there is potential for undiscovered oil and gas within sediments over 200 million years old. But the overlying sequences to this basin presents a much greater opportunity to store up to 15 gigatons of carbon dioxide in shallow rocks in about 140 million years old. This result indicates that the region could support multiple commercial-scale carbon storage projects, injecting about 50 million tonnes of carbon dioxide per annum over a 20-year period. This example shows the value in repurposing data sets to address new challenges, an approach that we will continue to implement into the future. The second example comes from the Upper Darling Baaka River floodplain. Here, the town of Wilcannia in central western New South Wales has been severely impacted by recent droughts, and residents were forced to truck in drinking water in 2019. Using airborne electromagnetic data and ground-based surface magnetic resonance data, we identified potential for new sources of groundwater for the town, which is shown in blue on this map. Drilling and pumping are now being considered to test these findings and possibly drought-proof Wilcannia for the future. Given the Murray-Darling Basin is one of Australia's best studied waterways, the identification of possible significant new water resources near Wilcannia highlights how much more there is to know about Australia's groundwater systems. The third example is the Delamerian origin, which runs along the border of New South Wales, South Australia, Victoria, and through Western Tasmania. We undertook a multidisciplinary study of the Delamerian origin where, among other things, we collected deep reflection seismic, analysed legacy drill hole samples, and conducted our stratigraphic drilling. An important outcome of this work was the identification of ARC-related rocks with potential to host convergent margin mineral systems, such as porphyry copper gold deposits within explorable depths beneath the Murray-Darling Basin. These rocks are shown in bright green on the interpreted reflection seismic profile on the right-hand side of the slide. Further work in this region under the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative will allow us to further interpret and consolidate the data we've collected thus far and complete a multi-commodity assessment of the region. My last example comes from the Trusted Environmental Geological Information Program, which concluded back in 2023, but still is very relevant today, where we assessed the resource potential of the four basins of North Bowen, Galilee, Cooper, and Adelaide. In each basin region, we developed a repository of the latest trusted baseline data and information on geology, resources, groundwater, surface water, and the environment to inform resource development pathways. Now we have a continued presence in the Adelaide Basin region to assess hydrogen storage potential. A key component of this work was the establishment of regional reference groups, where we collaborated and shared progress on our projects with industry, government, and community groups to build a mutual understanding and trust. We found this approach to be very positive, and we plan to adopt this approach across all of our regional deep dive projects as we move into the future. So how do we know that pre-competitive geoscience is making a material difference to resource discovery and improving management of Australia's natural resources? We track industry use of our data and products through ASX releases and by contacting companies directly themselves. This tracking reveals that over the last 8 years of the Exploring for the Future program, our pre-competitive geoscience directly contributed to more than 70 companies that are now exploring almost 600 new tenements that span approximately 490,000 square kilometres of Australia. From the colours on the map, you can see many of the explorers are targeting elements on Australia's critical minerals and strategic materials lists. The map highlights rare earth element explorers, with 4 rare earth element discoveries so far arising from our work. I think it's important to note that most of these new tenements occur in underexplored frontier regions. The Tennant Creek to Mount Isa region is a prime example of where the concurrence of new data, resource assessments, and deep dive projects has unlocked a major new exploration search space. Most of the mineral exploration in the region is by junior companies, some of which have established joint ventures with majors. They are in many ways the engine room of Australia's exploration sector, historically accounting for 73% of resource discoveries. While this result is excellent in and of itself, we should compare this level of activity in a global context. One of the key aims of the Exploring for the Future program was to reverse Australia's falling share of global exploration expenditure, which had been falling from a high of 23% in 1993. Explorers were leaving Australia as the perception was that exploration search space was exhausted. Since the Exploring for the Future program started, Australia's share of global exploration expenditure has risen from 8% in 2015 to 18% in 2020 and has since stabilised. From the data at face value, it appears that over the last 8 years, there has been a change in the perception by industry that there are still exploration opportunities in Australia to pursue. A recovery of exploration activity is great, but how effective is it? To answer that question, we teamed up with Minix Consulting to look at Australia's share of world-class mineral discoveries, those worth over $200 million US dollars, as they account for the majority of value creation. Since 2017, globally, there has been 41 world-class discoveries, 10 of which were in Australia. This level of performance is supported by our pre-competitive geoscience programs, as 7 of the 10 discoveries were supported by pre-competitive geoscience. Without this information, these discoveries would have not been significantly delayed or not have happened at all. But information alone does not generate this success. Rather, it's the combination of world-class information and its use by the highly entrepreneurial and world-class Australian explorers we have. That is the secret to this success. The amazing work that I have been able to show today would not have been possible without the collaboration of our research partners across Australia and the world, as well as the state and territory governments, First Nations groups, and cooperative research centres, and the National Collaborative Research Infrastructure Services, as well as our friends in academia. So again, I want to thank them all for your continued support. To conclude, I hope I've been able to show you some of the important ways in which Geoscience Australia is helping unlock Australia's resource potential through our world-class national-scale data, knowledge and tools. The future for pre-competitive geosciences in Australia is bright. The new Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative will provide new science, data and tools to support information decision-making by government, industry, and communities. We want to ensure that the benefits and opportunities of this initiative are maximised. So we are reaching out to you, our stakeholders, to get your insights and perspectives on the design and delivery of the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Program. I encourage you to visit the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity website for more details and contribute your suggestions through an online survey we've prepared. Our goal is to empower you, our stakeholders across government, community and industry, to make informed decisions about the sustainable development of Australia's resources. I look forward to our journey into the future together as we continue to improve and understand the geology of Australia and unlock our future resource potential and maximise the benefits of earth science for Australians. So thank you for your attention today, and back to you, Jess.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. I'm really excited to keep tabs on the updates as it progresses. But yeah, this is fantastic. So thank you.